Good evening, class. I'm Steve Shea. I recently searched the ProQuest Dissertations and Theses global database under the letter P, searching on a subject on which I recently wrote a paper. The paper was the Office of Strategic Services training at Chappawampsik Recreational Demonstration Area, or RDA, during the Second World War. The Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, was an Army element under the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That was the predecessor to both the Central Intelligence Agency and U.S. Special Operations Command, and especially the Army component of that command. Chappawampsik RDA was a National Park Service area created by the U.S. Resettlement Administration in 1936. The Resettlement Administration moved poor farmers out from marginal plots and to more fertile locations and acquired title to the properties through purchase or condemnation. At what would become Chappawampsik, the existing farmland was deemed submarginal or economically bleak. For example, the predominantly black communities of Hickory Ridge and Batestown were eliminated to create the park. Construction was the responsibility of the Civilian Conservation Corps, who built 5 camps, 3 for white campers and 2 for black campers. These were intended for poor children from Washington, D.C. The National Park Service then took over operations. Not long after the park's completion, the war was underway and the Army moved in. They would stay there through 1946, when the Park Service assumed control. In 1948, it became the Prince William Forest Park, which it remains today. I currently live right on the edge of that park, and I'm about a couple of hundred yards from where this training took place. There are aspects of what the OSS did during the war that remain inaccessible. The archives of the OSS reside at the CIA Museum in Langley, and even though I have a top secret clearance, I'm not permitted inside. Thus, for primary sources, many of the documents from the war are now available, but immediately after the war, they were not. Many of the sources from that period were anecdotal. The interviews with people forcibly removed to create the park, for example, or the experiences of agents as they went through either the accession process as a soldier going into the OSS, or a civilian being hired off the street directly going into the service. Their process as they went through training. There are some videos available online, for example, that you can see that were created during this period. But the dissertations I looked at were Brian McPherson's Kings and Desperate Men, the United States Office of Strategic Services in London, and the Anglo-American Relationship, 1941 to 1946, from the University of Toronto in 1995, and Mao Chung-Yu's American Intelligence, the Office of Strategic Services in China, from the University of California, Berkeley, from 1994. The dates are notable. The 50-year mark had been recently reached when both of these papers were done, and many of the items had become declassified. Thus, for these 2 dissertations, one focused on Europe, one in the Pacific, there were fresh insights. Even though it was the 90s, they hadn't been seen by the general public. Both sources in the U.S. and the U.K. were used for McPherson's work, focused on the Anglo-American relationship, and the CIA files at the National Archives were used for the Chinese subject under Yu's paper. Of note, in the past, I have found the tool of searching dissertations valuable for research that often doesn't make it into print. For example, I did one paper on German Army chaplains in World War II. There are few publishers interested in that, and the historians who have written on it have an inherent bias against the German Army, chaplains in general, or both. One such historian, who is an authority on the subject, is on YouTube blasting American military chaplains in the Vietnam War. Thus, the bias against chaplains in general is evident. Searching these papers is often a goldmine. and I've learned to benchmark these databases I have found most helpful. And as you go through the course of your research for whatever program you're in, I think that these databases are of immense value